Hello and welcome. What is all of this mess that's on my desk right now? Well, today's Crafty 101 episode is all about adhesives. And no one necessarily needs this much of a variety of adhesives, but what I want to do is describe to you the different types of adhesives that I'm familiar with, that I use, that I keep in constant supply in my craft area, and I will explain what I use them for, how often, how rarely I use them, and then you can maybe decide what makes sense for you to use in your craft room. I think to get started, it might be worthwhile to sort of separate things out into a couple of different categories. So, I think one way to differentiate things is liquid adhesives versus dry adhesives. So, what I'm going to do is make that separation first, and then we'll go through everything within each of those two categories, and I'll try to break them down even further as I go. So I'm going to pull out everything that is a dry adhesive. Then they'll just leave us with our liquid adhesives, and hopefully we can start to make sense of this world of glue that is available, because there are a lot of different adhesives available on the market, and just depending on the type of crafting that you do and the type of crafter you are, some of these might make sense for you to use and some not so much. So the what I'm left with here are a good variety of adhesives. Not everything that's available on the market, certainly, but a fair amount. And if we want to further differentiate things a little bit, we can also draw a dividing line of what is water-based adhesive versus our solvent-based adhesives. So that's another distinction. And why does that matter? Well, if we're talking paper crafts and water, what happens when water makes contact with paper? It will, generally speaking, start to absorb into the paper, which has the potential effect of warping your papers, of leaving glue lines. And so when you're dealing with anything that has a water content and paper, which is a porous material, that adhesive is going to seep into your paper. Why does that matter? It may not. If you are using thick cardstocks and you're not worried about your paper buckling or warping or any of that, then maybe you don't need to be too particular about the adhesive that you're using. If you're using a very thin, say, pattern paper, or maybe you like to use digital papers, but you print them out onto maybe a nicer quality copy paper, it's still thinner than your standard cardstock. So in that case, using an adhesive that is solvent based actually might be more advantageous, because a solvent based adhesive is not going to actually permeate into the paper fibers, but rather it's just going to kind of sit between whatever you are gluing your paper to and the paper itself. And in fact, it's possible that a solvent adhesive like Collal all-purpose glue or Beacon 3-in-1, it's possible those can add some extra strength to your project, because it doesn't actually soak into the paper. It's actually like an additional layer between your paper and whatever your paper is attached to. So that might give you some That's one of the reasons why I actually have these adhesives, the Kalau all-purpose and the Beacon 3-in-1, um, and the Kalau 3D glue gel. These are solvent-based adhesives, and they are really great for those purposes, and as well, they are a little bit slower to dry, so they do offer a lot of working time in terms of, positioning your pieces just so. So they're really great for that as well. Now, moving over to our water-based adhesives, there are a lot of different types out there, and they come in different form factors as well. So this might be one that's not everybody has, but this is a glue pen. And what's nice about this is you can just draw a line of glue, just like you're writing out your signature. And in fact, that can be lead to some pretty fun techniques, but it's really great for getting into small areas, small die cuts, and instead of having to manage like a large tip glue bottle, you've got a very fine pen point. And so it's really nice for getting sort of that precise line of glue where you need it. Then we have my favorite all-time adhesive. If I only had to pick one, I would pick Lineco pH Neutral. This is a PVA glue. PVA stands for polyvinyl acetate. And the reason why this is a really, generally speaking, PVA glues are really good for paper crafting because they are almost as the name would suggest in the word polyvinyl, is that they actually retain like a very flexible nature to them, so they don't get brittle over time. And if you've ever worked with other adhesives that might go yellow or go a little bit brittle and hard and start to kind of flake, those are not PVA adhesives. One good example of how you can use this is if you are familiar with how to make your own little notepads. Basically all you need to do is just, cut up a stack of paper, just like copy paper, and what you can do is just brush on a good quality PVA glue like the Lineco pH Neutral. Stack give yourself a nice, generous stack of paper, and then you can just glue one of the edges. And it essentially is almost, exactly the same as a 6x6 paper pad that has that glue that holds all of the sheets together. Well, you could do that yourself with the PVA glue. That glue is very flexible. It's kind of malleable, and that's why it's going to be long lasting over time because it doesn't get brittle and dry and flake. It is a liquid or water-based adhesive, and so it does permeate into a porous surface like paper, and it will create a strong permanent bond, which is really, really great. This glue in particular by Lineco is a bookbinding glue, and so a lot of people who make like their own sort of hand-sewn notebooks and journals, and they make their own book covers. A lot of bookmakers will actually use this adhesive, and because it's part of that industry as compared to the craft industry, it just has a whole different kind of world of price points. And I find that to be true for a lot of things that we use as paper crafters, and some of which have been adopted or adapted from other craft industries. But bringing them into the craft market, it's just a different relative price point. And so often, one of my biggest recommendations when you're shopping supplies is to look for similar or the same things in other industries, because for that industry, it might actually be priced at a very different price point. So I find that the Lineco pH neutral PVA glue is not only excellent quality, it's archival safe, it's acid free, it is also a fabulous price point. And so I would pick this over every other glue. I've tried other adhesives like the various types of Nuvo adhesives from Tonic. I've tried Barely Art Glue. I've tried a fair few others, and this is by far my favorite. I will admit I have not tried Art Glitter Glue, which I know is a favorite among many, and I also have not tried Cosmic Shimmer, which I know is also very popular. So I haven't tried everything on the market, but from everything that I have tried, I still find just value for money and the quality of what you get that this is the best for me. So, and it's so easy to buy too, always available on Amazon. And then another glue that is pretty well known, I would imagine, is Mod Podge. This is also a water-based glue, but it actually isn't, it's not strictly a PVA glue because there's other things in here as well. And one of the things that is kind of interesting with Mod Podge is that as it actually says on the label, you can use this as a glue to adhere two things together, but you can also use it to as like a finishing coat, as a sealer. And other things that also kind of fit in this are your various different mediums, like a diamond glaze, glossy accents, your matte medium. Those are all technically can be used as adhesives when you're talking diamond glaze and glossy accents. They are generally used as finishing sort of mediums where it gives you that nice little dome, that nice little glossy, here's the Spectrum Noir glossy highlights. And so often it's used as actually a final coat or a top coat, but these are actually also adhesives. So you can use these as adhesives as well. So you could put a dot of this down and maybe stick a sequin to it or an embellishment to it if you wanted. It's just that with media like this, the diamond glaze, the glossy accents, glossy highlights, it does leave what the name would suggest, that glossy shine. And a lot of times when we are using glues and adhesives, we're looking for something that when it dries, it actually dries clear and matte, and that way if you have some glue that might have gotten somewhere that you didn't want it to or intend for it to, then it's not going to call attention to itself. These will call a little bit of attention to themselves because they are a bit shiny. So those are a couple of other types of adhesives and medium supplies. Then we have this one, which is interesting. This is a little bit different from all of these. When these adhesives have a chance to dry, then they dry and they are no longer sticky. Eileen's Tack It Over and Over is actually interesting in that it's kind of a two-way adhesive where if you draw a line of glue and you actually don't stick anything else on top of it, but you allow that to dry, it will dry tacky and be repositionable. So instead of it being a permanent bond, it becomes a temporary bond. And so that is something that might be interesting for a lot of different techniques. For example, you could draw a line of glue, let it dry, and then use transfer foil and rub some transfer foil or rub some gilding flakes over it. And because it's still tacky, it's going to actually grab onto that foil or grab onto those gilding flakes. And then you can kind of create some interesting accents that way. So lots of different fun things that you can do with this, and I know that some folks have used glues like this to maybe rejuvenate a cutting mat, like a Cricut mat or Brothers Scan and Cut mat. So that's also an option too. Then. And speaking of, that I almost forgot that there's another class of sprays. So, there is a class of adhesive sprays. So, different types of glues that are in kind of a can that's aerosolized, and you spray it. And Pixie spray is one that is probably pretty familiar because it's one that can be used, as I mentioned, as a way to kind of save or add some extra legs or mileage out of a cutting mat, like a Brother Scan and Cut mat or a Cricut mat. But what I often use it for is to give a light spray or coating onto a stencil and have that be what actually holds the stencil down onto the whatever I'm stenciling a design onto, so cardstock or watercolor paper, etc. So this is another adhesive that is somewhere between wet and dry because it's certainly wet when it comes out, but it's not wet in the same way that this is, and it's aerosolized, so it's not super dry, but it's not like a dry adhesive tape, so it's somewhere in between. So that's sort of a breakdown of liquid adhesives. You've got your water-based adhesives, you've got your solvent-based adhesives, and a couple of differences between them. Just to break down the solvent-based adhesives a little bit more, I don't know that there's a ton of difference between the Kalal All-Purpose and the Beacon 3-in-1. There is also, Beacon does do a fabric adhesive, which looks an awful lot like this one. So, I don't know. But I will say that the Beacon 3-in-1 is nice because, it's also acid free, so you can use it for things like your scrapbook and mini albums. And so it's really nice in that regard. I mean, it does advertise here, instant grab, fast dry, but to be honest, I think the PVA glue, especially the Line Coat pH neutral, it's I think faster grabbing to me, and in particular because it does have a low water content. So, a good PVA glue, how I distinguish, good from, other qualities, is that it is, if it's low water content, it will not only grab fast, but it's going to be less likely to warp your paper. So if you put Mod Podge onto something, you're gonna see your paper probably buckle a little bit, curl a little bit, and you can probably even tell just by the consistency of it that it has more water in it than something like the Line Coat PVA pH neutral, or something like your Barely Art glue or your art glitter glue. There's a reason why with these high quality PVA glues, why a little bit of glue goes so long. It's because it's not watered down, literally not watered down. And so that low water content is not only good for, having it grab quickly so that you can just keep on going with your project and you don't have to wait for it to dry and you don't have to risk things shifting and moving around. But you also don't have to worry as much about your papers actually warping or glue lines showing up. So that's sort of what I look for in a good PVA glue. But none of that really is a consideration if you're using a solvent-based glue, because as I mentioned, these don't actually soak into your papers. Then another glue that I use a lot, which you've probably seen me use quite often, is my Kalau 3D glue gel. This actually comes in two different formulations. This one is, I think, silicone based, and the other one that I have, only marginally a little bit more expensive, but well worth it depending on the type of crafting you're doing. The other one is not silicone based and is acid free. So if you do anything that comes near a photo, then you will want the acid-free version so that it doesn't yellow or risk potentially yellowing your photo over time. The nice thing about a 3D glue gel is that it is so viscous. Like, these glues are pretty liquidy. The Kalau glue is still pretty liquidy. Beacon 3-in-1 is thicker. It's somewhere in between. That's why I ordered it this way. It's a lot thinner. This one's a little bit more viscous, and this one is a gel. And I just decant these larger tubes into these syringes, and I'll just kind of syringe out a line of glue, and it will hold that dimension. And what's nice about that is that if I'm looking to add a little bit of dimension to a project, using this is wonderful because you can just squeeze a little bit out behind even the smallest of, die cut pieces, and you don't have to worry about getting, foam dots or foam tape behind there. And as well, if I am adhering something onto an uneven surface underneath it, then this is also really great because it's a gel. It'll just go where it needs to go, and you can kind of level it a little bit to the top. And this is the only adhesive that I don't burnish like really aggressively when I go to apply it. So that's one thing that because you don't want it to flatten out completely if you're using it for the property of having all of that dimension. So that is the 3D glue gel. And then maybe sort of a little bit of a in-between is also glue sticks, because these are a little bit between a wet glue and a dry glue. So this is the Elmer's Craft Bond Extra Strength glue stick. These are pretty good. I mean, I know when you think Elmer's, you think like grade school glue bottles, but this is actually pretty strong adhesive. It's permanent, it's acid free, non-toxic, and all of that good stuff. So it is safe to use, and it is a fairly good bond. And so this is another good option that if you are at all concerned about warping, your paper warping at all, this would be a good alternative to maybe a PVA glue. So that is something that might be well worth it. I know a lot of bookbinding channels, they'll use this even. So it's good stuff. It's I wouldn't say it's necessarily as strong as a PVA glue, but it's pretty good, and depending on the application that you need, it might be the perfect adhesive for what you need it to do. So I like these. In particular, I think it's good for thinner papers, and so those are also an option. Now, getting into the dry adhesives. So, lots of different ways to kind of break down a dry adhesive. So, I'll bring them back on screen here. So, there are adhesive, double-sided adhesive tape. So, let's start there. And these come in a variety of formats, tools to apply them, and in different sizes and shapes even. So what all do I have here? If I had to pick one that is my kind of favorite, if I only could choose one double-sided adhesive, I would choose score tape. This is very, very strong, and it's really, really high quality. If you buy them in these thinner, well, you can buy them in rolls, and you can buy them in sheets. So they come in a lot of different form factors. So the wider the roll, the less expensive per square inch if you want to break it down that way, but a big roll like this is maybe, I think, $40 or $50, where you can buy just a single roll like this for $3 or $4. So it kind of depends on how much you want to spend and whether you're looking for per unit cost savings. But what's great is that it's really strong, acid free, heat resistant, all the good stuff. So this is my adhesive of choice for any scrapbooking, mini album making that I do, because I want it to be really, really strong. And that's the same reason why I would pick the Lineco pH Neutral as my liquid adhesive of choice, because it is acid free and archival, and so it's got all of those same properties that make it great for both mini album making, scrapbooking, and for your card making. It is expensive though. So unlike Lineco pH Neutral, which is a really good price point relative to some other glues in the industry, this is probably one of the more spendy tapes adhesives that you can get. So that's why you don't generally see me using this in my everyday card making, but you will always see me use this and almost only this, just depending on what I'm working on. Anything that needs to that has the potential of like touching a photograph, I'm using this. But it is kind of expensive, and I can't exclusively only use that. So I do use a more economical double-sided adhesive, and it's kind of a no-name brand. As you can see, it's not clearly branded or marked. I do buy it in sets like this, so it comes as a multi-pack with different widths, which is really nice. As it turns out, this is actually really strong stuff, and what I believe I believe I have a link to this. If it's not linked in all of my videos, I have started an Amazon storefront that has curated lists. And so all of my favorites are, I've just essentially shopped my order history and just added them into these organized lists so that it's easy for you to kind of see what I get and where I get it. And so this is another really good option. And as it turns out, it's really strong. Like, and how I know and how I gauge how strong an adhesive is, if I go to tape something down and it makes some maybe accidental contact, or, I've got it down and it's not in the right place, if I can easily pull it back up and it doesn't tear either pieces of cardstock, then it's not that strong of an adhesive. If I just graze it just ever so briefly and and I'm having a really hard time separating those two pieces of paper, then it's a pretty strong adhesive. That's score tape for you. Like just like a little bit of accidental contact and you've got a very strong hold already. It's not permanent. You can still try to lift it, and if you're careful, you won't get any tearing. This is pretty good too by that measure. Maybe not as strong as your score tape, but pretty darn good. And for the price that I get it at, it's really great for my everyday card making as well. And I do, this is a different brand, but I do sometimes like to get the 1/8 inch rolls because they come in handy sometimes having that nice thin strip. So these are really wonderful. These are all kind of double-sided adhesives that are on a roll like this. If you're not familiar at all with these, basically you pull this back and that starts to expose the adhesive on this side. You stick it down onto your project, and then the adhesive on this side, this has actually got a paper liner that you can peel up, and then that exposes the adhesive. So that's why it's an adhesive tape, because it's just a line of adhesive, and so these can be really handy for card making and mini albums, scrapbooking, anything. So these are really good. Um, I do have this, which is my ATG gun, so Advanced Tape Glider by Scotch, and the contraption itself is from Scotch, but I've gotten refills from other brands because they're just more affordable. And the nice thing about this is the form factor of it makes it very easy to lay a line of tape down. But essentially, the tape is the same as these. It's just some adhesive. This is already sticky, so it's already being exposed to air, which means that it's already losing some of its adhesive strength. So, I'll talk a little bit about that, how these actually differ from a liquid adhesive. But the tape gun is great for convenience, quick, I can run a line of tape really, really fast because I don't have to peel off an additional liner. If you are worried about any sort of kind of dexterity issues with getting that liner off, this is really, form factor wise, pretty easy to use. Smaller versions of this exist in these smaller tape guns. These are also tape guns, and they also come in different various different brands and various different types. So types of adhesive, that is. So Tombow makes they make 3 different types, at least. Maybe they make more now, but the 3 I'm familiar with are the third one I don't have and I don't use anymore, but that would be in a blue casing. That one is a solid tape that is permanent. The green one is a solid strip of tape that is removable. So this is low tack. Then the pink one, is a dotty tape runner. So rather than a solid stretch of tape like you would get off of a roll like this, it's actually small dots of adhesives. And the Crafter's Companion version looks like this, which might give you a better illustration of the difference. But conceptually, they're kind of the same, right? So this gives you a solid line of tape. This gives you lots of little dots of tape. Why would you want a dotty tape runner? Well, dotty tape runners are great for if you are trying to get adhesive onto an ephemera or a die cut that has lots of curvy edges and you want adhesive all the way to the edge. If you ran a line of this and you got it over the edge of that die cut, for example, well, it's not you're gonna have adhesive because this is just an actual flat stretch of tape. You're gonna have some adhesive hanging off of your die cut. So then what do? Do you trim it with a scissor? That gets kind of messy. Do you just fold that back in on itself? You can do that, but then maybe are you gonna get a nice clean edge around that curve? it's really hard to get, adhesive all the way to the edge of a really fine, intricate, and then that's off the edge of a die cut. What if there was a very lacy die cut? How are you going to get adhesive behind there? Sometimes it can be hard to get, liquid adhesive behind a very lacy die cut. Well, that's when these little itty bitty dots are great because you can just run this over that lacy, like a doily die cut, for example, or anything with a curvy edge. And what's nice is that because it's not a solid line of adhesive, it's just these little itty bitty dots. If there isn't paper there, then it won't pick up the dot. And if these little dots are hanging off of an edge, they are a lot easier to kind of clean up if there is anything hanging off the edge with just one of these little gum erasers. You can just rub this around those borders, and that will just pick up any adhesive that actually, is hanging off of the edge of a die cut or piece of paper. So these can be really good in that way, and the dotty tape runners are very, very useful. So these might be nicer just in terms of having a small form factor if you don't like the big ATG, but I probably won't buy these after I'm done using them because I do prefer my ATG gun, and the refills are more affordable and more economical. So for things that I tend to use a lot of, I'm always looking for the most sort of economical choice, trading off between, that and maybe I have to sacrifice a little bit in another way, like this may not be acid free, which is fine. If I need acid free, then I know I can go to, another option. So those are all different double-sided tapes. Now, I mentioned I would talk a little bit about the difference between like a liquid adhesive and a dry adhesive. Well, there is a big difference in that I mentioned, once this glue dries, it's going to be permanent. And as sticky as any double-sided adhesive is, there's always going to be the risk that it is going to lose its tackiness and, its strength over time. And in fact, depending on the climate that you live in, your climate can actually make that worse. If you happen to live in a climate that's very humid, it could actually kind of speed up the I don't want to say decay, but maybe the degradation of some of these adhesives. And it's possible that over time, these adhesives, if you don't use them, so I wouldn't necessarily buy like anything, in big quantities that are dry adhesive unless you're going to work through them and use them, because there's always the possibility that it actually dries out and loses its stickiness before you even get to use it. So I wouldn't like bulk buy anything that you don't know that you're gonna really use up in in quick order. Because there is that risk, and just depending on the climate that you live in, it may be more of a risk than in other climates. So that's why double-sided adhesive, anytime you see me using this, I almost always put a line of liquid adhesive there as well. And I probably sound like a broken record if you've ever watched me make a mini album or construct a box or anything like that. Because one of the things I always say, the reason why I use the combination of the two is that often I will run a line of double-sided dry adhesive as close to the edge of whatever it is I'm gluing down so that I have a really nice seal all the way around the border, and I don't have to worry about messy liquid adhesive, trying to get that out to the edge and then having it like ooze out and then creating a mess, maybe getting onto, the cover of my mini album when I don't want it to. So that's why I really like using a dry adhesive all the way around the outside border. And then what I'll do is I'll squiggle on a little bit of liquid adhesive in the center, so that I have the benefit of, this nice seal all the way around the edge, adhesive to the edge, but I get the permanent hold of a liquid adhesive. And what's nice about the dry adhesive is it's very quick grabbing as compared to the liquid adhesive. So when it's down, it's down. Depending on the quality of your adhesive, you might still be able to lift it up, but it's going to hold firm. And so that can be very nice. If you need the wiggle room, you can always draw a line of liquid adhesive right over top of your dry adhesive. So that's definitely still an option if you want to have a little bit of wiggle room when you craft. So those are tape rolls that are double-sided. You can also get dry adhesive in the form of sheets. This is double-sided dry adhesive that's on a sheet. So there's a paper liner on this side, there's a paper liner on this side, and there's just a very wide sheet of adhesive. And so why might this be something that you would want to work with? Well, if you make mini albums and if you're like me and you like, for say, the cover of your mini album to have nice edge to edge adhesive, 100% adhered, so that there's no bubbles later, there's no lifting. What I'll often use is adhesive sheets, because as I mentioned when I talked about this wider roll, the larger, the format of your adhesive, often the more economical it is, because they've had to do less to kind of, get it down to size. Maybe there's less packaging involved. So this is really good for that. It's good for the convenience of being able to apply. Basically, this would be the full cover of most of the mini album sizes I would ever make. So I don't have to apply, a bunch of little, half-inch strips all the way, down the length of the cover. I can just put my pattern paper onto here, cut it down to size, and I'm good to go. So adhesive sheets are really nice in that way. And so that's another option, and score tape does sell it in sheets too, so you can get the score tape in this format as well. And one thing that I will also say for all of the dry adhesives is that if you ever see me working with adhesive on rolls like this, it may be hard to tell, but I always hold it from the side, and I always use this little acrylic block to put some pressure down and then tear against it. You'll never see me actually doing something like this, where I'm touching the adhesive and tearing it like this. It's very, I'll never do that. You'll probably never see me doing that on a video, or even when I'm not recording myself. And as well, you'll rarely see me touch the adhesive. Why is that? Well, the reason is because dry adhesive is going to lose its tackiness as soon as it starts to touch anything. You've got, maybe lotion on your hand, oils on your hand, whatever. Even if your hands are perfectly clean, the adhesive might be picking up dead skin cells, and that is going to start to weaken your adhesive. And so I whatever adhesives I'm using, I want to try to get the maximum strength out of them as possible. And so I always handle my adhesives from the sides like this. I never touch it to tear it, so I always put this acrylic block down and tear against it so that I can avoid actually touching the adhesive at all. And that's just something that I've gotten into the habit of doing because of using these for making mini albums, because with my mini albums I try to make them so that they last. I don't know, I give away most of the mini albums I make, so I don't know if it's something that somebody would want to, keep forever and ever, but if they're using it, if they're handling it, then I want it to hold up over time. And that's different than using a liquid adhesive. If you get your finger into a liquid adhesive, you're not going to take any strength away from it. It's still going to dry. It's still going to soak into the papers and be just as strong. This, on the other hand, not so much. So with any of your dry adhesives, the more you touch it, the more it touches other things, the less tacky it's going to get. And in fact, a lot of people will use different tapes and actually put it on their clothing, for example, and tear it up just to make it less tacky, so then they could use it for, say, holding down a die as they run a die through the die cutting machine. So that is something that some people do very intentionally, and so there's a time and a place to do that. But if you're actually trying to use this to adhere two things together, then I would definitely recommend not touching it, especially not playing with it as much as I am. But even as much as I'm playing with this, it's still pretty strong. So so that is a variety of different double-sided adhesive tapes and different form factors that they can take. So then, if these are double-sided adhesive tapes, how about looking at some single-sided adhesive tapes? So those also come in a good variety. So we've got your plain old just roll of Scotch invisible tape. Really good. I'll use this to glue something down or adhere something down to one side. Oh, I forgot. I still have a little bit of this. I should show this. Red liner tape. So red line tape, I've stopped purchasing it, but this is another, before I move on, so this is another double-sided adhesive tape that is very strong. The difference between this and the other tapes that I showed is that this red, it's actually a plastic liner. So it can be a little bit tough to release the adhesive on the other side of this, but I used this a lot before I discovered score tape. And this is like literally the last little bit of this that I have. So, but it is an option out there for you. It's very strong. If these days I don't know what the price point is of a red liner tape versus score tape, but if this ends up being more economical, then certainly it's a good choice. The thing that a lot of people don't like about it, just in terms of workflow, is because the red liner on this is plastic, you can't tear it. You have to use scissors to cut through it, and sometimes that red liner can be a little bit difficult to remove. So that's another double-sided dry adhesive. So as I was saying, there's single-sided adhesive tapes like your plain old Scotch invisible tape, and great for just securing something where you don't really care because it's not going to be visible. So often I will use this. Actually, when I use this the most is probably when I'm making a pocket or a pop-up or an interactive card where the different levels of cardstock, like an extra layer of cardstock, can create a bit of a catch point for other papers to kind of get hung up on. And so often I'll just run the line of Scotch tape right over that cardstock to smooth out that transition so that it doesn't create this like bump, and that way whatever needs to glide over it can glide over it easily. So that's really good for that purpose. Then there's washi tape, which is a single-sided adhesive, so it's only got adhesive on the one side. Washi tape is great. There's a lot of different uses for it. It's fairly low tack, but you can use it for you can use it for decorative, elements on your card. I often use it on the back of envelopes when I seal my envelope before I send it. You can use it to hold down your dies if you want, because it is thin, it is low tack, so it's good for that as well. But speaking of that particular usage case of a single-sided adhesive, there's mint tape from scrapbook.com that is for that purpose. So a nice dry adhesive that is low tack. Then there's also, I think Spellbinders calls it the world's best tape. So they've got their yellow tape, and it is often used for that as well, in the sense of like holding down a die. Although I find that this is actually stickier. It's a stronger adhesive than the mint tape. And then there is, I use this a lot. This is Avery. It's actually Avery repositionable labels, and they are sold in big 8.5 by 11 sheets like this, so you can print on it. And the idea is that this is actually sticky on this side, but it's a low tack. And what do I use this for? I use it for masking. You can buy masking paper, which is, adhesive, low tack adhesive on one side, paper on the other side, but this is far more economical than masking paper. So I like using it. It serves the exact same purpose. It's a nice just like copy paper weight, easy to stamp on, and if you're making masks, it doesn't really matter, you're not coloring onto it or anything. You're just stamping, fuzzy cutting on the stamp line, and then attaching that to your project to mask off an area that you don't want to color or you want to protect from, whatever your next step is in your art. So this is really great, and it is very affordable. I don't do a lot of masking, but I still like to find an affordable option when I can. So there's that. This one I just was recommended. This is actually Scotch removable tape, and I think Cece, oh no, Cece or Cindy, I can't remember. I think it might have been Cindy actually who recommended this to me, and this might be a really good alternative to these. And then I don't have to use pretty washi, but the idea behind this is that it is low tack, and so you can use this to hold down dies and run it through your die cutting machine and tear it back up and not have it actually, tear your paper. So it's working pretty good. Who knows how this will hold up once it's got the pressure, because often putting pressure is actually going to create a stronger bond. So then, speaking of, that's a good reminder for me to mention that with, in particular with your double-sided adhesives, but really with any dry adhesive, There's going to be a couple of things that you can do to really maximize the strength of the adhesive. And the first is to not touch your adhesive. Don't touch your dry adhesive like this, because the more you touch it, the more adhesive, the more you weaken that adhesive, because now it's picking up the oils on your skin, it's picking up your dead skin cells, and it's losing tackiness the more you touch it. So don't touch your adhesives, and that's one way to kind of preserve or maximize the strength of any adhesive, dry adhesive that you use. The second, with a dry adhesive in particular, is to burnish really well, because what is going to weaken your adhesive over time is touching it, but also exposure to air. So I mentioned that this tape runner, this has exposed adhesive right now. Like everything that's on this roll here, that's all exposed to, that's all adhesive, it's all sticky right now. And it's being exposed to air, and it's whatever dust is in the air, that's what's getting attracted to it. The adhesive itself is starting to dry out, and so that's contributing to its loss of adhesive power or strength. And so air is going to be something that you want to minimize when you go to use your adhesives. And so one way to minimize your adhesive when you go to use it is to burnish really well. So if I put a piece of tape down, so I'll grab a bit of tape. I would never really do it this way, but just to show. And if I put a bit of tape down like this, then you would tear the liner. So now I've exposed the other side of my double-sided adhesive. And if I'm gonna go to actually glue this down onto something, you could do this and feel like, oh, that's pretty good. But what you really want to do is burnish. You want to burnish your anything that you glue down. And what you are achieving when you burnish is you're actually knocking air, pushing that air out. And maybe the best way to demonstrate this is I'm gonna grab a bit of black cardstock, and then I'm gonna grab a let me grab a bit of just some clear acetate. This was packaging, so grab a bit of that, and I'll show you. You might be able to actually visibly see the difference. So I'll run a line of adhesive on, so I'm not touching, only touching it on the sides. I'm gonna tear it, and actually this isn't big enough. So what I like to do is burnish first, so that you're only having to push through, one layer of that paper liner, and the glue that's made contact with the black cardstock, you're making sure to get a firm hold there. That also helps you to actually remove the paper liner, because now it's sticking more firmly to the first layer, my black cardstock, and that's going to make it easier for me to lift this. And if I do that again, I'm going to do another strip, but I won't burnish this one. So we'll do that. And then I'll just peel that off. I'll maybe push it down with my finger, but I'm not going to take a bone folder to burnish it. So can you see the difference already? Where this one feels more clear, this one feels a little bit more white. Well, that's because the adhesive hasn't made really firm contact with the black paper, where here I burnished it, and so that adhesive has made pretty good contact with the black cardstock. And what you're seeing, what's white, those are air gaps. So there's air that's trapped under that adhesive, and that's just going to continue to kind of dry out your adhesive over time. And so then if I put like a line of plastic over top of both of these, you know, if I just kind of push it down with my finger, and push this down with my, even just pushing this down with my finger, you can still kind of see this is a little bit more black, that has a little bit more white. Now I'm going to do the same. I'm going to burnish again from the top side on this one, and I won't burnish that. So I give this a really good burnish, and it's great doing this with acetate because you can actually like visibly see it getting darker and darker to where you don't see nearly so much of that white. And what that is just trapped air under there. So I can try to test pulling this up. So see, I can actually lift this and peel that off, and put that back down. This I'll probably be able to lift, but actually, see, now I'm lifting and it's peeling off the plastic, but the adhesive is sticking to the paper because it's so firmly burnished into the paper, and the paper is a porous surface, and it's got more texture and grab to it than the plastic, which is kind of, you know, slick. And as well, I didn't clean this plastic, so it might have like oils from my fingertips and whatnot that also make it pull away from the adhesive. But do you see the difference? Like, by not burnishing this down, I'm able to actually lift the adhesive off from the paper, and it's not even tearing. But like I said, this is not my score tape. So, whereas here, I burnished it really, really well. So that adhesive is well firmly stuck down to the paper. So what's going to release is the plastic over top. So I hope that helps to kind of demonstrate why burnishing is so important and why I like harp on about it all the time in my videos. I've never done this demonstration on camera, so hopefully that kind of shows you why I do the things that I do on camera, and why you know, and it's a more maybe visual, hopefully, demonstration of how it, you know, actually kind of plays out practically, and how it works, and that it does make a difference. So I can go in now and still burnish this and get it to like be as clear black as possible. And you know, because I've lifted and peeled it so many times, see how I'm still able to lift it. So it's important to kind of do it in steps and do it, you know, kind of right the first time. So that is dry adhesive, and how to work with it to get the most out of it, and why burnishing matters so much. So, you know, the top tips are: don't touch your adhesive and burnish so that you can knock as much air out as possible. So that is our dry adhesives, both double-sided and single-sided adhesives, dry adhesives. Then let's look at another type of dry adhesive, and this is going to be your more dimensional adhesives. So I've got various different foam adhesives or dimensional adhesives, and Okay, so let's talk about foam dots. So there's two, well, there's more than two types, but there are your more foam dots. I like these. They're very dimensional. They're like 3 millimeters, if not more. Great for like dancing cards, like your swinging mechanisms. So that's why I keep this on hand. Really, really love it. And often when you see me working with these, I still put a dot of liquid adhesive again because I know this is dry adhesive, and at this point I've had it for several years. So I also know that over time it's probably lost some of its stickiness. So I put just a little dot of liquid adhesive just to really make sure it's nice and permanent. This is good because it does come in 3 different sizes, which is nice. Not super critical, but kind of nice. Then I've got glue dots, and I have these in 2 different sizes. I've got the this one's 1/2 inch, and then I have one that's even smaller. These are kind of nice because they're a little bit flatter than your foam. They are, both of these are clear. So that's one big difference. Like this is a white foam. These glue dots are actually clear. So they're great for a lot of different, especially the smaller one. Sometimes with the smaller one, I'll put a little glue dot, like the glue dot underneath, like maybe a ribbon. If I'm tying like a ribbon or a bow on top of a project, I will put a little bit of a glue dot just to anchor that down before I tie the knot. So it's good for that. These ones are the affordable ones though. These ones, they're called balloon glue. I don't really know why. It might be a weird translation because as you can see, it's made in China. But it is clear, 1/2 inch. I use this for I mean, they do use it for balloons. They're in their what they're showing to actually like stick it to if you're decorating like if you don't have helium filled balloons and you're just like sticking them onto walls and whatnot. But they're good for maybe the backs of wax seals. When I'm making wax seals to give away as a gift, I'll put a little 1/2 inch glue dot behind there so that it's just a peel and stick situation for whoever gets it. And they are good for just how else have I used these? Actually, lately I've been using it for a lot of wax seals, but they come in handy, and I've gotten these really inexpensive balloon glue dots, and they are way more economical than buying, the 3M version or whatever brand version this is. So, but these are good because they are clear. So there is that, and they're a little bit lower profile than these white glue dots that I have. You can also get glue squares and micro dots. They come in a pretty wide variety. And so, for example, I have these in sheets. Again, pretty thick, good stuff. This one, this I got in like a swap. A really kind person sent me this sheet of just these really small, like teeny tiny, like super teeny tiny glue dots that are, look how small those are. And so those can be really great for getting behind those little die cuts, and so that they come in handy. These would really come in handy for swinging dancing cards. So they come in sheets too. And when they come in sheets like this, I would definitely recommend, as you use them up, don't throw away. This is still double-sided, adhesive foam, so I would still use that. And because it's all good stuff, good for adding some dimension. So then, speaking of like foam, double-sided foam, or just foam for adhesives, I buy them. You can get them on rolls like this, and very similar to your dry adhesive tape, Basically, you have, as you peel this up, you have adhesive on one end, and then you have a liner, like a paper liner on the other end. So you would glue this down and then remove the liner to expose the adhesive, and then glue whatever else you wanted to glue or attach on top of it. And these just have thickness to them. So they are good for things like shaker cards, for anything where you want to add some dimension to your project. And so you can buy them in this form, rolls, which are can be big. Like, look how big the Pear Blossom Press one is. If I had to choose and only use one forevermore, I would definitely use the Pear Blossom Press World's Best Foam Tape, because it's got some pretty amazing properties. If you caught my Crafty 101 on like basic craft supplies, I indicated there as well that this is my foam tape of choice, because it's got a lot of properties that are really great. It's acid free, so really good, safe to use for any projects where photos might come in contact. It is great for shaker cards because it's double thick, so you don't have to stack up multiple layers of this to get to a nice thickness to where, your shaker bits have some room to actually move around and do their thing. And of course, it's made by Pear Blossom Press, so it's designed to have a good thickness to support or to cover the light up mechanism that Pear Blossom Press puts out. But what's really phenomenal is that it is repositionable for 30 minutes and permanent after 24 hours. And so what makes that really great is that, especially if you're using this for things like shaker cards or light up cards, and you put this and it makes some accidental contact with your paper, you can still lift it up and it's still going to be repositionable for that first half hour or so. But I would still give it a good burnish. Even foam tape, I would still give a really good burnish to make sure that you're knocking as much, because it's still a dry adhesive. So you want to knock out as much air as possible, but after 24 hours, it's going to be a nice, strong, permanent bond. What's really great that I think I harped on, quite a bit in my other video, Crafty 101 on the basic supplies. If you look at this, why do I have this black, gaffer's tape or painter's tape on here? Well, I have it here because this particular roll of adhesive tends to unwind here. It will not hold itself there. Right now it's doing a decently good job of staying because I've trained it. But if I left it to its own devices, it's going to slowly start to unravel. And as it unravels like that, it's going to expose that adhesive to air. And just like I was saying earlier, air is what is going to dry out and cause your dry adhesive to lose its tackiness, lose its adhesive strength over time. But if you look at the Pear Blossom Press adhesive, it's stuck all the way down, not moving a bit. So you don't have to worry about this tape, unraveling, uncurling, and losing its stickiness. It's going to be there, nice and strong. It's sealed, protected from the air as much as it can be in this form. And when you go to use it, it's easy to peel back, and as well, the liner is really easy to peel off too. The paper liner is really easy to peel off. This one, the paper liner, I always have to go at with a pokey tool, like poke into the foam and like pry it off. It's not the easiest thing to do in the world. So if I only had one foam tape to choose, I would choose that. But I keep a lot of other foam adhesives on hand because I use them for more than just my interactive cards, my light up cards, my shaker cards. And what I prefer when I'm not making an interactive card where I need that bit of thickness, because those adhesives are good, like these thick ones, all three of these, they're really good for various different types of interactive cards, whether it's a shaker card, a light up card, or like a swinging dancing card. The thicker foam is really good for those. But I like to have a little bit of dimension on my cards just for like your regular old mats and layers card sketch kind of card, because having that bit of depth and dimension adds some interest, and things don't look so flat. And so what I like, my preferred adhesive is to buy them in sheets like this. And over the years, I've tried several different, types of foam sheets. I do like having black, because sometimes you're working on a card that maybe has a layer of black cardstock as your matte layer, or colored cardstock, and or the die cut itself is black, and white is just going to be too stark, even at a glimpse from the side. So black I like having as well. I have this in white too. I kind of like this format for a couple reasons. It's got adhesive on one side, which is great. Some of the foam sheets I have, there's no adhesive on either side. But I do like the option of only having foam on, or only having adhesive on one side, because then what I can do is, instead of buying, foam adhesive strips of various widths, I can make my own. So I just take my double-sided adhesive tape, and I'll run a line of tape in whatever width that I want. And then let's say I put a line of tape there, then all I can have to do is take a steel ruler right up to the edge of this line of tape, and then with a craft knife just cut it off, and then I've got a nice strip of foam adhesive to whatever width that I want. So, I can get 1/8 if I want. I can get, a quarter of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, half an inch, whatever it is that I need. I can make it to order essentially. So that way I don't have to like stock or, keep on hand various different widths of, adhesive, foam adhesive strips. I can just make them whatever I want. And this is easy to store. It's nice and flat. It's a big sheet. This particular one is about 2 millimeters, 2.5 millimeters thick, which is it can be okay if you're doing a shaker card that doesn't have a lot of dimension to it. So like if you are using maybe confetti or flat, sequins, this might be okay. You wouldn't even have to necessarily double it up, and it might still have enough room for your sequins or confetti to move around. So it can be used for shakers, and or just for adding just a little bit of extra depth and dimension, like I was saying. Sometimes it's nice to get your mats and layers down, and then attach your focal images. Maybe it's a collage of different ephemera pieces, and so it's nice to pop some of those up to give it some added dimension. Then these two, this is my favorite. This is my low profile foam, advertised at 1 millimeter and probably actual 1 millimeter. And I have my and I've measured it actually with my calipers, and so true to as it was advertised, this is super thin. Really, really good stuff. I love my low profile foam because for those extra layers and of depth and dimension, you could build up one or two different layers and still not be in danger of triggering extra postal service charges, because if your envelope gets to be over a quarter of an inch thick, or then it can be considered a package at that point as opposed to a flat letter. So then it goes from, the cost of a single stamp at, 60 cents or whatever the cost of a stamp is these days, to then being like maybe a $2, $3 package. So the low profile foam is really good for that. And it's just thick enough to add just a little hint of something, but then you can also add multiples if you want different levels. I can't find this anymore. And in fact, the company that originally made this, like the listing, it still says currently unavailable. Every so often, I'll click on my link just to see if it's still there. And I just don't have high hopes that it's coming back. I have not been able to find this exact foam. It was kind of an accident that I found it in the first place. And I should have, don't take for granted that anything you see on Amazon is gonna always be available. That's my lesson learned. And the reason why I don't think it's coming back is because the same company that makes this now advertises this as their 1 millimeter foam. And you might be able to see that these are indeed different. Maybe ever so slightly, but one is definitely a little bit thinner than the other. This one is thinner than the one on top. The one on top, it's so slight, it really is, but it's perceptible to me when I go to use it. And this is like 1 millimeter, maybe just a little bit under. This is closer to 1.5. This is about 2.5. The black one's about 2.5. The foam on a roll that I have is about 3 millimeters. So does one need all of these different thicknesses of foam adhesive? Probably not. But I have them because I've just tried different things to try to find, the thing that I love. I found this instead. And these were the ones that I started with when I was first buying foam by the sheet. And then I do need the thicker foam for, those very specific interactive cards where it's nicer to just have one strip rather than having to double this up. So, there's a convenience factor there, but for sure, and these are double-sided, where these are, this one in particular is single-sided, but my 1 millimeter ones, they are double-sided adhesive. So there's lots of different things on the market, and as I mentioned, I want to be sure to, tell you, what my favorites are, but also the reason why I have so many is because I do use them for different purposes. And you might not need them because you may not need to craft in that way or make those types of projects where that makes a difference. And so that's definitely kind of up to you, and I would definitely shop around and try different things but I'm making this video so that if you're trying to figure out where to start and why to pick one thing over another, then hopefully this helps to give you some ideas about why how I use certain adhesives and why they have a place in my craft room. So to give a final quick recap, we've got our dimensional adhesive, so foam adhesive by the sheet, by the roll, by the dots, clear ones as well as, more opaque ones. Then we've got our double-sided dry adhesive tapes. So those also come by the sheet, dispensed through a large gun like this, dispensed through a smaller, gun like that, or tape runner like that. Also on available on wide rolls as well as thinner rolls. Then we have single-sided, adhesive tapes for various reasons, various levels of strength. So you've got your super strong adhesives versus your low tack adhesives. Then we've got some mid-ground between dry and wet. So there's the spray adhesive. This one happens to be light tack and repositionable. This is extra strength and is a glue stick form. So we've got those. And then moving into our liquid adhesives, we have things that can be adhesives, things that can be sealants or top coats, and as well adhesives that are solvent-based, and adhesives that are the liquid form of being able to add some dimension, just like we have the foam sheets to add dimension. So this 3D glue gel would be kind of the equivalent of a foam tape to your standard liquid adhesive. We have some liquid adhesives that are repositionable and tacky when they dry, as opposed to being, permanent. Glues that are dispensed through a pen for really fine precision. And then my favorite liquid PVA glue, line coat pH neutral. So that's a whole lot of adhesives, all the various different types of adhesives that I use, and why I have so many, and what I use all of these different ones for. Nobody needs all of this, and nobody needs all of these various different types. So as I mentioned, pick and choose what you need for your craft purposes. And if you have other recommendations that are your favorites, do let me know in the comments below. And if I said anything that was incorrect, also feel free to correct me in the comments below as well. I'm always striving to learn more, and so if I got anything wrong, certainly I would love to be corrected and learn. And as well, others watching would benefit from that too. So I hope that this helps. Links to kind of all my favorites are always in all of my videos. You'll find most, if not all of these, also on my Amazon. I have what they call like idea lists now, and what I'm using those for is to just group different products that I buy from Amazon and use often, so that it's easy for you to find if I'm ever using something in a video and it's something that I mentioned that I got off of Amazon. Hopefully by visiting my Amazon storefront, you'll be able to easily find what it is I'm using, and that link will always be in all of my videos as well. So that's it for this episode of Crafty 101. And if you have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Thanks.